is the meeting of the Master Plan Committee meeting. It's a hybrid meeting being conducted in person at the police station conference room over the Teams. This meeting is being recorded for future viewing on the cable channel and the town's YouTube webpage. I will go through and ask who is here. Steve Boucher, Peter Giamba.
Here.
I'm here. Dave Davinian, Peter Benoit.
Here.
Ryan Resendes.
Here.
Jesse St. Gelais. Paul Sullivan.
Here.
Melissa Cadero. So we have 5 members present. We have a quorum. That just says, do we have anybody up on Teams right now as alternates?
No.
Nothing? Okay. People chiming in, they just have to let us know who's there. All right, I'll turn it over to either Victoria or Serpent Lizeth if you want to stop and go through. I guess we're going to go through this little punch list you have.
Sure, yeah. So right now we're at the stage in the master plan where we've talked about all the different chapters, all the topics that we could discuss in the master plan. So if you recall, we talked about land use, housing, economic development. We talked about the water and resource management plan, as well as the open space and recreation plan. We had a session to talk about services and facilities, as well as transportation. So what we are looking at today, and what you guys have had a chance to look at over the last couple days, is about kind of like the summary of what we've heard from our conversations here, our conversations with the public, meetings with boards and committees, as well as different stakeholders. So based on those discussions, we put together a preliminary list of draft goals and strategies. And the point of tonight is to really go through them with you all and for you to give us the seal of approval and be like, yes, these are the goals that we want to move forward with, and this lets us take time over the summer to begin drafting them. That's not to say that there's not an opportunity to think of new goals as time goes on. But this lets us keep the project moving and lets us advance in a pretty significant way as we get ready to kind of present the final plan in the fall, kind of winter time. So starting with land use, we break it down by these broad themes and then by smaller kind of bite-sized goals. So modernize the town zoning bylaws to meet priorities for economic growth and housing development. So in order to achieve this kind of vision statement, we want to consider developing design guidelines for the village business district to enhance the community's small town feel. We want to extend the village business district further north up to Nyes Lane and Leonard Street. And then reconcile split zone lots to support infill and redevelopment, particularly in the village business district. Any questions on those? Any comments?
So on extend the business village district further up north to Nyes Lane and Leonard Street, we don't have, it's not, that wouldn't be considered the village. The village is on that side of town.
Yeah, this was North Main.
So that's up in from like the river's end from the town water up through what we call just Maine and then up to Pope Park, right? That's the village district and over into the Slocum Street area and behind the town hall and things of that nature. So you really need to look at where that's labeled out in the zoning district. We wouldn't call it the village district. And to further up north, Nyes Lane and Leonard Street. So it would be to Leonard Street, not Nyes Lane, because Nyes Lane is right down at the dairy right there. So you would only be talking between those two, and we were talking about starting anywhere from the beginning of Middle Road here and all the way to Leonard Street if we were going to look at doing something like that. So the Nyes Lane, that would be chomping off a big section of Middle Road, roughly a mile of Middle Road that we would be excluding, and that wouldn't make much sense.
Okay, so just to summarize, you would want it to start at the beginning of Middle Road to...
Yeah, right down over there.
To where, Leonard?
Down to Leonard, yeah.
Okay.
We had briefly discussed that on Middle Road and Main Street.
Okay.
Also, yeah.
I heard you say something else, that you wouldn't want it to be called the business village district. Would you want this to be a whole new zoning district?
It's not. So it's not that hard to paint a color on a map. It would just be, you could say it's a business district, right?
Okay, so a
But not a village. It's not the village. It's not considered the village in Acushnet, right? So we kind of be mislabeling what we've always known as the village district. right? We have a village district in town, and we have the business village district in town. If you look at the bylaws, the way they're set up, there is already allowing 10,000 square foot lots in the village district, must have water, municipal water and sewer. And in the business district, it should say, which it doesn't say, which I'm surprised nobody's ever caught until I'm talking about it, it just says, must be have municipal sewer. And it should be the same thing, because it's the same 10,000 square foot lot criteria. So it should match, it should say municipal water and sewer, because you can't technically, and if Dave Dominion was here, he would tell you that if you have a well, the Title V law is 1 bedroom every 10,000 square feet, right? So that would dictate you can't have that. You don't really allow like a 1 bedroom if we were doing that. So it's kind of, that bylaw needs to be updated, and I think it's something the planning board can really just do. It doesn't have to be part of this master plan. I think it should be updated immediately. I know we missed this town meeting, the opportunity for this town meeting, but there's some other quick things that planning's doing for updates, and that should have been one of the things that we looked at, is just changing that little piece of criteria to match the village district.
Okay.
One's a business village district, one's a village district, and it's a pretty big swath of village district, because it's mostly sewer all in there.
Okay.
That's why we allow the 10,000 square foot lots.
All right. So I'll make a note here. I'm writing some things on the side to just adjust it to not call it the village district, and it would be its own newly named district.
Like just business district would be fine.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
Just eliminating village.
With similar zoning attributes to the business village, correct? Is that what you're saying? So 300 feet from the center of the road?
Yeah, it would be, if you wanted to set the parameters like that, I think it's 300 feet, the current zoning in that is 300 feet from the center line of the road out each way, right? So 150 feet, is it 300 from the center line of the road?
300, yeah.
Yeah.
From the center line on both sides?
Yep.
Yeah, so just match it, so it makes sense
Okay.
to allow for that same kind of business zoning. And I don't really know what reconciles split zone lots to support infill and redevelopment, particularly in the village business district, because there aren't any lots available in the business village district, I don't think, that are undeveloped.
I think we're talking about down on that South Main Street as we started going towards,
David?
yeah. But there were a couple of lots that were there that we were talking about the size, and realistically you could split those up into 2 or 3 instead of just having 1 lot, and that the zoning should be adjusted to be able to do that.
I don't know about you guys, I know it was discussed, I'm not really in favor of that. There's no infrastructure for stormwater, and if you start splitting these lots up, you got a single family house that's exempt from stormwater, you're gonna split all these lots up to 10,000, 11,000 square feet, and you're gonna put a house up there, and there's all this impervious surface, and there's nowhere for the stormwater to go.
Can I just interject real quick? Just to clarify, the split zone lots is for, for example, the village business district is 300 feet from the center line to the road, right? So half or, a portion of a parcel boundary, it has 2 zones. So it's called like a split zone lot. So sometimes when a developer or resident, whoever, wants to develop or do something on their property, and our zoning is unclear about how we handle split zone lots, so there should be something in there, about, they could pick either district, or that's a hard line there. That's sort of what it means. Yeah.
So it's just, I think there's a little confusion, but it's a good point. The business, if you look at, and I don't know if, do you have business, the zoning, it's just a red line that basically carries all the way down. We actually blocked out, there was a piece of South Main Street to the Faven border, we reclassified that as the business village district, because it didn't make sense. We kind of stopped it at a premature spot. So years ago, we said, can we at least just extend it to the Faven line? But I don't know what we're really saying, Victoria, because it says split. So I know that it's all allowed uses, so residential is always allowed. And then there's the business, which is also allowed on a lot. So what's the split thing?
So the split thing is like, let's say you have a parcel, right? And let's say the zoning boundary is right down the middle. So can that applicant or can that property owner have their business district on the rest of that parcel? Or does it stop at that zoning boundary? So it's just about providing clarity.
So basically, I think what she's saying is making some sense, because I think what she's saying is, you may have a lot that's, call it 400 feet deep, right? By 100 feet of frontage, 125, whatever it is. Existing today in the business village district. I think, Victoria, make sure I'm saying this right, I think what she's trying to say is, because it's 300 feet from the center line of the road, the first 50 is kind of null and void because it's part of the road and the road layout, depending on the width of the road, let's just call it 50 feet. So now you have 250 feet in on that particular lot, and I think what she's trying to describe is, it's fair, it's like the hard line that she talked about is, nope, that's the cutoff, right here at that 250 feet, that's all business can be, but I think what she's trying to say is, can the other 150 remaining feet of depth of that lot be developed for commercial, business, whatever's allowed in the business village?
Correct, it should be clarified for staff and for property owners.
And also, instead of going in front of the ZBA for variance.
That as well,
I
yeah.
think,
Some of these parcels are
Makes
half
sense.
in, half
Yeah.
out.
yeah, I mean, is there any chance you can throw that up there or no?
I would have, she would have to stop sharing for me to.
I can if you want.
I could-
Just so everybody can see what we're talking, I think that's
Especially if we're trying to get economic
Oh,
really good sense of.
Or just send this to you so you can open both.
If the lots in both zones,
Just
just
at least
either.
allow language, you're not extending it.
Yeah,
You're
just
just
for the
allowing
language, yeah.
language in a particular lot, if somebody wanted to do something, they
Right.
could build into that lot. And
Yeah.
I'm not hard stopping it, it's like, oh, now what am I doing with my last 50
Right,
feet?
because, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because
It
that
kind
might
of
not be
makes, it
feasible.
does make
It does make
sense.
sense.
Yeah.
Just
I mean,
for that.
obviously, if they have the proper setbacks and whatever,
No, of course.
depending on what the business is.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's just, I think I think what they're proposing, based on what Victoria just said, is that's all that it would allow. There'd be some specific language for planning, special permit granting authority to allow to use if there's only 50 feet left of the lot, to say it could go ahead and be used for the business purpose. It's not a hard stop, because what's that 50 feet of land doing now? You can't do anything, you can't be residential, can't be anything else, so just to let it flow,
Makes sense.
it might make sense
Yeah.
to capture that little, so,
That was the one I clicked on. Yeah, so that one.
Do you want the light off so you can see it better?
yeah, if you could just do that for a second, Eric, just so, I mean, people at home, if they're looking, if they can see the screen, so they know what we're talking about, because I think it's important for the communication.
It'll always pop, that'll keep popping up. But yeah, you can see the top half of how it's half in, half out.
So,
I'm trying to find one that'll let me actually click on it.
That one there.
so it's pretty much, you can see what the explanation is. I mean, even down towards the bottom of right there where you are, see that lot right there? See how you have that little piece of yellow within that lot line right there? That's what they're talking about, capturing into the business district. It's just, it's there to be available for residential, but if somebody has a business and they want to expand parking or whatever it may be, I don't have to go to ZBA to have to pay $300 and say, yeah, we don't have a problem with that. I mean, it's just, it's allowing planning as a special permitting granting authority to just go ahead and say, if somebody's coming in with a whole new design, perhaps somebody wants to knock down a house and put a business there, they can. And it accommodate a little bit bigger business in that red strip, and that's all that it's doing. Without making the zone bigger, because no matter what we did, if we try, I think the rationale behind that, correct me if I'm wrong, was that for Victoria, you can't, no matter where we start drawing that boundary line, if we said, well, let's just look at it and go 350 feet instead of 300 feet, no matter where you do, the way parcels are chopped up and property lines are, you're gonna end up in that situation. You can pretty much see it anywhere you would do that. You can't, you just keep compounding the issue. So I think it's a simple solution to rectify the proposal for doing that.
Plus, making it easier certainly encourages economic growth for businesses to move into the county.
Absolutely.
I think
Yep.
that's really, so, that's that. Thank you.
Great, no, good discussion. I'm glad we worked through that. So the next kind of vision statement that we have here is to maintain the town's rural character. And as I mentioned this kind of strategy here, goal, you'll notice that there's a lot of crossover. So in areas where we might discuss land use and zoning. We'll also discuss at the same time economic development and housing and open space and recreation themes. So we'll make sure to note in the plan, once it's like graphically designed and laid out, indicators that tell you, hey, this goal right here also talks about economic development and housing. And so you can kind of start to draw those connections, and we'll do that in a visual way. But right now, we're just working with this guy here. So to maintain the town's rural character, we talk about developing an open space residential design bylaw. So this is what we talked about the last time, where we take, say, 10 acres, and instead of building...
I apologize, you can leave the light, yeah, if you guys don't mind leaving the light the way it is. It felt like it dropped a few degrees too.
That too.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, no problem.
So the last time we met, we talked about how instead of building one house on 1 acre on 10 acres, you can build one house, all 10 houses on 5 acres, and leave the rest of the 5 acres on open space, some type of trail, so that way it's green space and preserves land. The second goal that we talked about was preserving and acquiring more open space through various means, so either partnerships with existing land trusts that are already active in the community, using potentially, grant funding to achieve that, and any other opportunities that the town sees. So,
Seth, the only comment I would make on that, the priority is low. I think we should move that up a notch.
Okay.
I don't know how the committee feels. Does the committee feel that that should be a
Yeah.
higher priority than low?
Yes.
Yep.
Sure.
Mr. Sullivan?
Fine with me.
I was actually surprised to see it though.
Any
This
questions on
caps
those?
This meeting, but also everybody else that they talk to.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So people in the town are saying, oh, I don't want to spend money on anything. So they move that to low priority, not realizing exactly what they mean.
But there's a lot of ways that the town can acquire land. Right? I'm hoping to be able to demonstrate that soon. And the coalition of Buzzards Bay, they just bought that property off South Main Street in the back. We just put a CR on it recently, right?
Yep.
So there's those ways, but I would like to see the town have ownership instead of the coalition getting ownership of all the land. I think it's great for the town to have that ownership and not someone from the outside owning all our real estate, so. And there are plenty of people that would be willing to donate. I have another individual with, I think it's 29 acres. It's pretty difficult to get to it, but she wants to donate that land as well, so. I mean, donations, grants, whatever we can do. I mean, I know there's a lot of different funding out there. And I think that there's probably quite a bit for open space. And recreation, so.
Yep, and you'll notice one of the columns that we have here lists potential funding and technical assistance opportunities. So we haven't begun filling that out since the writing hasn't taken place yet. But as we move along through the summer, that will fill out, and you'll have a chance to see that in the fall. So all of this should have a connection to a potential funding source or some type of assistance. All right, if there are no more questions on that section, I'm going to move on to housing real quick.
Mr. St. Gelais is present now.
Questions on that section there? Okay, great. So moving on to housing, we talk about focus on diversifying the town's housing stock to meet the needs of the entire community. This is a general statement to really address the various conversations we had. We want to make sure that our seniors can age in place and stay in the community that they've lived in their entire lives. Allow, young people who grew up here, who may want to stay here, to afford a home. So these various strategies in some way, shape, or form support that idea. So review the minimum lot size of the residential aid district to encourage managed development throughout Acushnet. I remember we had that conversation talking about how it might be too large and maybe prohibitive, and what can we do to adjust that. Expand the village residential district into southern Acushnet.
What does that mean?
So that, I believe, was talking about harnessing some of the smaller lot sizes and utilize that to capture some development further south.
Yeah, I think this was a conversation from the last meeting. I think this, Pete, is what you were talking about earlier, how there's some, smaller lots, and everyone else has a smaller lot and has a house on it except that one. So this is about allowing that sort
older
of.
houses weren't under the lot restriction
Yeah.
size that we had. And also, maybe there's 10 houses in a neighborhood, and they're all at 20,000 lots, but we've got a 40,000 minimum on it, and there's one 40,000 lot. We could realistically fit 2 houses and match the neighborhood instead of just one under the existing.
Yeah, I've had some conversations with people about that and, trying to clock back our zoning, and I get it. So, I mean, the governor's already kind of done that, but that was an unmerging of lots that were merged. And I know there was something that took place in the town that I don't want to get too descriptive on, and it was some allowed to be built on a 10,000. The problem is if you're gonna look at something like that, you really you can't just say, I'm gonna match the lot size and be okay and accommodate lot size with what's kind of in that area, because the town's really scattered with different size lot sizes. And then you also gotta, if you're gonna write a bylaw, and you gotta try to, if you're gonna say, well, it fits the characteristics of the neighborhood just because of lot size, then you should really say it's gotta fit the characteristics of the housing stock that's in that neighborhood, right? So people and it just happened right down the road here, and a lot of people upset is, you allowed that lot to be buildable, which I didn't, but somebody did. And look at the gargantuan house that's there, it doesn't fit into the neighborhood. So if you're gonna do it for lot sizes, you really have to do it for home sizes, house sizes as well, right? Because that kind of, the house is a beautiful house, but it looks kind of stupid sitting where it's sitting now, because it doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood, right? So if we're gonna fit the character of the neighborhood, then we should be also fitting the characteristic of the neighborhood, meaning homes, right? And not having some beast sitting out there in the middle of, 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranches, small capes, and then you're putting a colonial in there, 5 bedrooms, it just looks horrible.
Right.
And it just happened.
I see. Would it be worth adding kind of like some condition to this expansion, saying that
If
we
we were
apply-
gonna look, if the town's gonna accept zoning in the future from the planning board, I think it's important that you at least put some kind of criteria on the housing that can be developed on the smaller lot sizes as well, right? Not, you gotta limit it, right? In square footage, it should match the same square footage, that's the, if the common square footage is 1,000 square foot homes, you shouldn't let something 1,500 or 2,000 square foot be built on the same lot size, right? Because now you don't fit the characteristic of the neighborhood, right? It's just for, somebody taking advantage of a small lot size.
Yep.
So we talk about affordability and things of the like, I mean, that's really what we're talking about, right? That's, if you change the scope of the size of the home, it's more affordable, right? And I think that's how we would, if we had proper zoning, it may be a way to get affordable,
Yep.
a bit more affordable, let's put it, I don't really believe in what people try to say affordable is,
Yeah.
but I think we could do a better job by limiting the structures on lots to provide for a smaller, more affordable.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great consideration to add. I'm making a note there. After this meeting, any changes we make to those goals and strategies will be sent back out to you guys.
I mean, again, if it's gonna happen for that infill.
Yep. Okay. Perfect. The next goal we have here, 2.1.3. Consider zoning changes to accommodate the production of diverse housing types and implement design guidelines to preserve town character. So this kind of gets to what you were talking about earlier, that if we're going to be proposing and allowing for these new types of housing, whether it be apartments or condos, we want them to look and feel a certain way. And by incorporating design guidelines, we are ensuring that any developer who comes in knows exactly what the town is looking for. We don't want modern block buildings, we want more traditional New England style, and that's going to be spelled out both visually and narratively in any bylaw that gets changed or proposed to allow these types of buildings. Any comments on that? So 2.1.4, review the market viability of the special residential development special permit in creating 55+ housing development. So we had a conversation a couple meetings back where we talked about how successful this bylaw has been, what it's produced, and what we may need to change about it in order to enable and facilitate developers to come in and actually take advantage of this bylaw in town, especially if we're trying to create housing for specifically seniors in our community. Any questions on that one? Cool. All right. Maintain and expand affordable housing stock. So something that the state recommends is updating the town's housing production plan. So this will take stock of all affordable units in town, and also think about strategies that the town can implement and take advantage of in order to support additional housing development in town. This kind of gets us started in that direction. The housing production plan can go into a little bit more depth. I've seen some really interesting build-outs done in other housing production plans, really talking about looking at available town land and what you could do with it. And the next goal, 2.2.1, is creating affordable housing units on town-owned properties. So this one is in there just to explore potential uses, because I know there was some discussion about an old library, the old school, the library, yes, about it potentially being veterans housing or some other type of housing. That is an option that we want to maybe discuss in here, but if there are any other thoughts, we'll also include that in the conversation.
First time I seen it, when I looked down at it, I was like, are you nuts? You're not developing housing on town-owned land, meaning, the recreation land that we have, forestry and stuff like that. It's just like, if we were to have, I know it's one building, it's an isolated incident, but who knows what will happen in the future, so. I get it when you mentioned the old library, right? It's town-owned property as of right now. I don't know how much longer.
Okay.
Right, we're gonna look at that, talk about that. I think we moved forward with something, did we move forward with grants?
Yeah, we applied through the One Stop for a feasibility study to see, how potential housing options for the,
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I think that grant, and Victoria might be able to speak more on it, but I think when we discussed it as a board, the board of selectmen, I think it was, the studies just to possibly bring up the value for the town, because we can't actually capitalize on that, but somebody else could.
right, might make it more appealing to a developer to see, more about the status of the building.
Kind of, so that's why I think she went for the grant, is to
Yeah.
kind of give that, and it might bring the value up. Saying, this is what the feasibility study showed, and this is what could be done with it, and people look at it and get a visual of, okay, that has some value to me, let me get a higher price, let's just, per se, on that property.
Take some of the uncertainty away if they're just looking at it
Yep.
dark.
Looking at it the way it is now, but we need to move, because the longer we wait, the worse condition that building's getting in, so.
Right. Okay, perfect. So I'll make a note there that it's not your open space and recreation plan, but it's those vacant, underutilized, maybe former town buildings or acquired properties that you guys have. Okay, economic development. 3.1, we're looking at revitalizing Main Street to encourage walkability, placemaking, and small business development. So in order to achieve this, we're talking about kind of referencing back to the previous goal in the land use section, expanding the village business district to appropriate areas of town. I'll adjust this to match the statement above where we talked about middle road to Leonard Street. Expand the industrial zoning district in the northwest section of town. I think I heard some discussion about this a little bit earlier. And then review current zoning to determine barriers to specific types of development and industries in the downtown.
So are you still on 3.1.1?
Oh, yes, I just went through the whole list so we can.
Right, so it's just, again, can you just wipe out the word village? Expand the business district again?
Yep.
Because it's no longer considered the village. I think it is currently the way it's zoned up to like Oliver Ave, Rogerson Ave, Old Michael Park.
Yeah, that's the name of the district. I know you mentioned earlier.
Right, so that can, instead of flipping out all the current bylaws in the business village district and the village district, you can kind of leave that alone and if we're gonna look at it, it's gonna just be called business district, I think we do, right? And we can just rezone those segments leading off of the red line that goes on Main Street and then make a new district from Middle Road down, and I think That one, I don't know if that one, Lizette, should be the one, because that's the business, the village district is on that side of town, so the other one up here talked about 1.1.2, expanding the village, he said no, business district. This one down here might want to be just to Leonard Street and get rid of Nice Lane, because I think that we're talking about the Main Street side of town. It's similar to the one up top, right?
Yeah, I think
That's when we
these
talked
were
about
supposed to
going up
mirror
all those
each other,
key
right?
For land use?
Yeah, these were supposed to like mirror each other.
Yeah, so this, but, so you just get rid of it, just say expand the business district to appropriate areas of town such as north to Leonard Street or something like that, because Nice Lane's on that side of town. And we already corrected it in the first one, first category, to be starting here. It doesn't make any sense to chop it, because we have a few businesses between here and there anyway.
Okay.
So I don't know, and you call it industrial.
Yep.
I don't know. The next one, I'm sorry, was expand the industrial zoning district in the northwest section of town. We don't really have a,
There's that one little sliver.
Yeah.
so the
there's a
reason,
tiny-
I'll tell you the reason behind that one little piece, if you want to put that up on the map. Show me the one that's, I think I know which one it is.
It's like that tiny little square on the top left. Oh, you can't see it now. Oh, yes, yes. Sorry.
Joe, can you get it?
Which one are you looking for?
I don't know, there's an industrial zone, there's only 2 of them in the town of Acushnet.
I think it's those two parcels. The purple one and the gray one right next to it, I want to say.
That's conservation.
Yeah, industrial.
So that's all conservation land, the purple?
No, the purple's industrial.
That, maybe that small purple,
Oh, yeah, the deep, so one.
Yeah, that's.
So,
Yeah,
conservational.
can I explain that little spot on why it was zoned industrial? So back in the day, when, what do we want to call it? I think it was medical marijuana was the first one on. The town said, because you had to have zoning for it, so we zoned the 2 industrial zones. Because that little purple spot really doesn't exist. It's a parking lot that we were gonna donate to Freetown for senior housing. It's now a storage yard where an old screw factory was, and there's contamination. So we were trying to be clever when we didn't know anything about the medical marijuana industry and what was happening. We said, well, if we gotta have zoning, pow, purple that spot, and pow, purple that spot. We know you're not doing it on PJ Keating's grounds, and we know you ain't got nothing to do out there either, and it's not even really, I know it's part of Acushnet by boundaries, but it's in the New Bedford side, right? It's actually Freetown already on that side. The border of New Bedford, Freetown stands here, there's a corrugated cardboard place, and the old screw factory was there. That's what's all contaminated.
Okay.
So there's nothing in that purple zone. It's really just an image, is what I'm trying to tell you. There's a swamp back there, so that's basically a little strip of parking lot that might be, the town might own 20 feet wide, and it goes back a couple hundred feet, and then we get to what Mr. Resendi said was conservation land, the bigger blue one.
Okay, yep.
That's really what that is. But there's a swamp back there.
Okay, so there isn't really an opportunity for,
There is 0 opportunities, what I'm telling you. Unless somebody plans on opening up an industrial zone there, and they're gonna do it on a 20-foot wide by 100-foot depth parcel, which is 2,000 square feet, we ain't gonna have too much industrial activity there.
okay.
And I even think that might even still be inside of our bylaws, like the medical marijuana facilities. There was a moratorium we put in and all that stuff, right? So there's contamination problems there. There's not enough big enough piece of land, and we were gonna do a deal. And I remember being part of that conversation, I don't know when it was, somewhere around 13 or 14, we were gonna donate that to Freetown for $1, just to get the liability, make sure the liability of that would transfer over to.
I see.
But
Okay.
they had a falling out of their, unfortunately, senior housing project, and now it's a ugly storage yard on a main road.
Okay,
So that zone's garbage.
okay. So I know we'd identified this area as a place where we could expand industrial zoning to just create potential opportunity. Is there anywhere else in town that you would target for expanding the industrial zone?
Yeah, right where it already is. So I don't know if it's only the 381 acres that PJ Keating owns, but we had a quick conversation about that. And in the back, there's some parcels that the town owns, PJ Keating owns, a lot of it's wet, some of it isn't. Is that opportunity to explore that yellow zone in back there, right? There's no access to it right now.
This area right
It's
here that I'm
landlocked.
circling.
And all the way down the
That's
south.
conservation land too.
It's a town.
Some of that is and some of it isn't. So we'll be looking at that and exploring it coming in from the, what everybody knows is a 240 bypass.
That blue's the town forest.
Costco in there.
So, I mean, you could,
That's
yeah.
right.
So I don't
Yeah.
know, there's parcels, we might try to acquire parcels, we might try to, in the future, if we're gonna do something about a 240, we could talk to PJ Keating in order to have that initiative, because when I speak with the lawyers that I've been speaking to, of trying to do that roadway, economic development's the best way to get the state and the feds to put that exit into that backside, right? So they won't do it, they tried to do it in the early 70s. It failed because the feds would never do something for one person,
Right.
regardless of the company or not, right? So when the lawyer that I'm working with, he used to be the former mayor of the city of New Bedford, he knows quite a bit about this kind of thing that we're discussing, and he said the best way to do it is propose it alongside of helping PJ Keating to get all that truck traffic off South Main Street, along with a piece of it being economic development.
Right, right.
So if, you know, even if they donated 10 acres of land, the 381 acres is not, it's not all mineable.
I see, okay.
So, I mean, that would be something that I think, you know, everybody would support, because there's only one way in and one way out. And
Yeah,
it's not through a town road.
yeah. It might also be easier for them. Might actually
That's the
help
biggest
them.
thing, they don't want the extra
Uh,
traffic.
Might actually make their operations easier too.
Correct, it
Yeah.
would, yep. And it would get all that congestion off the road, the Acushnet roads, right, especially South Main Street, and alleviate a lot for Fairhaven as well, because they gotta come through Fairhaven to get to us, right?
Yep,
Plus realistically, it could provide a great market area for business that's there. You can put an outdoor walk around type of retail district there that could be used for shopping year round. Throw one big anchor store in there like a Costco or something, and a huge foot zone. It's, I mean, get away from the malls, everything is now the outdoor style malls. And they seem to be flourishing pretty well.
I'll revisit this one. I'll not expand to the northwest, but behind PJ Keating and talk about it that way. Okay.
And that would be part of the economic development too.
Yes,
Right.
yes, yes. Okay, any questions on that section? 3.1.3 is the only one we haven't touched on. Review current zoning to determine barriers to specific types of development and industries. Okay. All right, focus economic development to remaining areas in town that are suitable for mixed use, commercial, and, my mouse is not working, I'm sorry, and industrial growth. So we talk about pursuing brownfield remediation at critical parcels in town, 3.2.1. 3.2.2 is enhance river-oriented commercial activities along Slocum Street. I know, Victoria, there was some discussion about whether or not this was feasible. Where did we fall on that? Where do we fall on that?
I don't know, say, I thought I read something about New Bedford next using that portion of the riverside that we were originally talking about. And I think that when we were talking, it was contingent on whether or not New Bedford would tie into it and allow us to use that area in conjunction with, wasn't it?
I think so.
So that, you're talking way down south along the river, there was a small section that was there, we could tie into it this way. Shortly after our meeting, I read something about New Bedford.
Oh, what with the docks?
Yeah,
Yeah, they mixed that,
Yep,
the city council did.
because we talked about doing something like what we have on Lake Street and opening it up.
Yeah, and Ryan using his paddle boat.
So we'd like to, but I think that's kind of been shot by New Bedford right now.
Okay, all right, I will look into that policy and then truly, if that is the case, then we'll remove that one. Okay, 3.2.3, review the inventory of town-owned land to explore commercial, industrial, and business development opportunities. So I know going back to that area right behind PJ Keating, that's one that we're talking about. Any others that we want to discuss?
I mean, we were fairly limited when we were discussing to begin with what was available for it. And I know there were some open tracks in Acushnet that we were looking at the possibility of being donated to Acushnet at some point. But I would imagine that those are for green space and not for development. So behind PJ Keating was the biggest opportunity.
Okay, all right, perfect. All right, and the last section, not yet, never mind. Before I move on to those, I've got a couple more. Cultural and historical resources, this is section 4. The ideas here are to preserve Acushnet's historic properties and expand the public knowledge of their importance. So we talk about explore funding opportunities.
Oh, you don't have a record?
Oh. I thought we were almost done.
We got a ways. So we're exploring funding opportunities to improve the facilities at Perry Hill Church and Quaker Meeting House. I know during our last meeting we talked about limitations to that. Obviously we want to preserve the historic characteristic of those, but there is funding out there to potentially rehabilitate some of these sites to make them more useful for public events in town, and I know there is interest in having them for public events, so if there's funding for that, that might be an opportunity to kind of create that space. 4.142, unless there are any questions on that other one? Okay. Work with the library, COA, and school department to expand historical education programming. When we were here the last time, we talked about how we weren't really sure what, people are learning in school, what the kids are learning in school about Acushnet's history. I don't know if we ever were able to get a sense for that. I think Melissa said she was gonna look into it, but I don't know if that ended up resulting in
I'll
anything.
reach out.
Okay, thank you. And then 4.1.3, research funding opportunities to implement the 2008 master plan improvements for the Apple Peach Festival operations. I know we've talked about, we're just more porta potties and that type of thing, but if we're talking about improving some of these other spaces that could be used for public event space, this might tie into it. So just exploring opportunities there, seeing if there's a more permanent solution, more attractive for people, and maybe attract more individuals. And then 4.1.4 is formally adopt the shared historic district with New Bedford. This district is already approved through the National Register of Historic Places, so unless the town wants to formally include it into their zoning bylaws and add it to the zoning map, it would need to go through town meeting approval and vote, but the district already exists, so it's just a kind of formalizing.
It does, we have a historic district.
Yeah, on the National Register of Historic Places, yeah.
I know that.
I can send that out, what we have on it.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
it's, what's it called, head of the
Head
river?
of the river.
Yeah,
It's
it's
shared.
shared with New Bedford. Okay, any questions on that section right there? All right, see none. 4.2, protect and promote Acushnet's rural, cultural, scenic, and historical qualities and assets. So I know there's been a lot of discussion around Keith's Farm. That's why we incorporated this strategy, which also you will find in the Open Space and Recreation Plan section. So coordinate with the Acushnet Fairhaven Land Trust to develop a community-oriented space and activities at Keith's Farm. 4.2.2, develop creative solutions to enhance town programming, such as a summer concert series. We talked about there were some challenges with that existing event, even though it is very, very popular, and, you know, identify solutions or other ideas as to how we can continue to support that and the library. So any questions on that section before I move on? Okay. Services and facilities, this is section 5. We talk about enhancing services and supporting efficient government and fiscal responsibility. So we want to look at updating infrastructure on critical roads with planned improvements. I think this goes back to the discussions around what's going on South Main Street. If there are others that are identified through this process, we'll make sure to include those as well. We talk about completing utility work on South Main Street prior to repaving and ownership takeover. I think there's already an active, Victoria, correct me if I'm wrong, there's some work being done to possibly do that. I don't know if that is the case.
On South, like right now?
No, not now, but maybe like getting funding for it.
Yes,
Okay.
that is the case, yep.
So I know there's, it says repaving and ownership takeover. I don't know if that'll ever happen, because that's gonna go to town meeting. And I know it's been talked about amongst certain individuals, but I also speak with a lot of people, and taking over South Main Street would cost the townspeople a fortune to deal with that. And what benefits we would reap from it.
None.
Thank you.
They would need to install sewer,
So, I mean,
water, upgrade the water, install sewer, then I would entertain it, but a takeover
we've had a
without,
conversation, the Board of Selectmen have had a conversation when it first came about, and trying to take over South Main Street. I said that would probably be the only way that I wouldn't speak against it at a town meeting for takeover, is for the state to, if they're gonna redo that road, is put a dummy sewer pipe down from where it ends and to Faven Line and stem off each side street, and we have to replace the 100 and some odd year old water main that goes down Main Street. And the state's not interested in doing anything because the cost is too big. So just snow removal alone, there's a mentality in the town of just snow removal alone in mild winters, and I talked about this, it's probably 50 grand a year just to maintain it, to keep it the same way the state does now. And in a horrendous winter like the 2015 season where we had back-to-back storms, it would be a fortune just to keep it the same way the state does. So, I mean, I know there's certain individuals that might be interested in taking over that road, but I'm not so sure that the community shares that vision.
Okay. So maybe in this section, we can talk about, maybe lay out some of the pros and cons of what ownership takeover would bring and what it, you know, just give everyone a clear picture of what that means.
Are there any pros? Seriously, I mean, it's a huge financial liability, responsibility for us, an investment to begin with in a time when we don't have any money,
Yeah.
as well as an upkeep requirement moving forward, which would increase our draw on DPW and everything else. There isn't a pro there for us actually owning it.
They're not in a position.
Victoria, do you have any
Not
insight?
in a
Because I
position for that at
know
all
that
right now.
probably Mass DOT has been coordinating with the town on the improvements to the road.
That is correct, so the plan, and this started prior to my arrival with the town, just want to put that out there, but, sorry, but, okay.
put away the pitchforks.
Yeah. So we are approaching 25% design of South Main Street. And this is completely funded by the state. The town is not paying for anything for design, and the town will not pay for construction because the plan is to get it on what's called the TIP, which is a Transportation Improvement Program. So again, would not be paid for by the town. So through this design process, some town staff members have been attending the meetings and giving feedback, to MassDOT about, some things that would benefit the town if we were to take ownership of the roadway. But, I mean, one of the things MassDOT is saying is that, they're doing all of this, with the end goal of the town accepting the roadway once construction has been completed.
Well, it's great for them to say that, but we've never agreed on it, so.
Well, they
can say that.
they are aware it has to go through the proper channels and town meeting, of course. That is also why, you know, the selectmen gave me permission to apply for a grant for planning and design to extend the sewer along South Main Street to the Fairhaven line, so we can kind of be proactive. You know, if we are to take ownership of the road, if it is to get reconstructed, we have the proper, you know, utilities in place before, you know, we get a nice new road put on. So we are trying to be proactive in the planning aspect of it. So hopefully we do get the grant, and that will be, again, if we get the grant, that would be completely funded by the state. The plan, yep. So, you know, this has to be done in steps, right?
Right,
You know,
the CWMP, I think, did a lot of that, looking at sewer.
Yeah, they definitely had a lot of environmental, like impact and stuff like that in there. And I did lose part of that for the application, which was nice, so.
I know PJ Keating was doing test pits recently, the last couple of weeks, well, like maybe a month ago. Checking to see where ledge was, but.
The state should have did that road 15, 20 years ago.
Are we for us to take it over?
Really?
I bet, yeah. Wouldn't you?
No. You got roads that need to be fixed, fix them as best as you can, right? They own North Main Street as a state highway as well, but that's not part of the conversation. Doesn't make much sense. So, I don't know, I would have to, you know, I would love to know what the pros are.
Sure, yeah, we can spell them out, yeah. If there are any, you know, who knows, we'll find out.
I think the pros would be all new infrastructure under the road and at zero cost to us, and then it's a discussion, you know.
The problem is when we had that conversation, Mass DOT came back and said, yeah, no, we're not interested in doing that.
We're not interested in the road.
So, I mean, and I get it. We're doing Slocum Street, and just the water infrastructure alone for 2,200 linear feet is 1.5 million just for water pipe, right? No labor.
But if they're looking at reducing their annual expectations and responsibilities for cost, okay, so invest now and make it worth our while to take it over, and it takes away your responsibility moving forward afterwards. Otherwise, there's no benefit for us.
And I'm pretty sure if they went to Fairhaven, because that's an extension of the state road of Fairhaven, said, yeah, no, we have no interest in taking over that road for you. You just keep doing what you're doing. There's been several times that have told the state that. So again, I'm not saying that Acushnet's going to be bundled up in that, but it's going to go, everything goes to town meeting, right?
Maybe tie a package into that 240 development that you're talking to. Extend 240 for us, maybe we'll think about it.
It would help with the longevity of the road in the future, like maintenance costs that, you know, we wouldn't have truck traffic on there. It's an
I
idea.
think it's a package deal. And then we get something out of it.
Yeah, but the big problem is if you were sitting in my seat as a member of the Board of Selectmen, and you look at the age of our piping, I gave that infrastructure speech several years back. We have over 43,000 feet of 100-plus-year-old water pipe in this town, right?
I'll bring you guys in a bottle of water from my house.
It's
Bring you one from
our water infrastructure is in desperate need of upgrades, and it's a fortune. The town did something crazy back, I want to say it was somewhere around 2000, 2005, or right down here on Middle Road, and they spent a fortune and they borrowed, God, whatever the borrowing was, it's double, the interest made it double. I think it was 3.5 million, and we're paying for it for 40 friggin' years. That's how long they bonded it for, and we carry $208,000 in our water debt line item.
Wow.
For 40, I don't believe that water debt goes away. It's in 3 different tiers, but they're all bundled right here, and I think the furthest one, it expires 2047. And that was 3.5 million, we're paying back 7 million. I got the principal and interest docs. So you basically borrow 3.5, you double that in your interest payment because it was borrowed for so long. And that was done, let's call it, just for the sake of this conversation, 20 years ago. So that $3.5 million project today is probably a $10 million project. I mean, that 3.5 20 years ago is probably a $20 million project now, right?
Yeah.
That's the big issue, is they don't address it, they don't fix it, it just becomes more expensive the longer you kick the can down the
So
road,
some people
right?
laugh at me when I talk about water infrastructure, Mr. St. Gelais, but it's no joke, right?
Yeah.
Because we got well over 3,000 municipal water users in this town. And people you kind of joke with me and kind of laugh at me when I talk about it, but it's not really a laughing matter, right? Because 100-year-old water pipe don't last that long, right?
Right.
So we're in dire need, and we have 43,000, I'll say it again, 1,000 feet of 100-plus-year-old water pipes. Slocum Street, the one we're replacing now, is 120 years old. Once
So
we,
like you said, Ryan, I mean, your water quality over there is,
oh, it's brutal.
yeah, I mean, it's become a health issue, right? And it's not,
It
being-
can-
it's not, you
So,
know,
it-
potentially
the
anyway,
reason why
right?
people laugh, and they're like, you know, and I'm not gonna use names, but it's other people that are in government, right? And they kind of laugh it off, but, and I get it, there's nothing sexy about it because you can't see that pipe, right?
Yeah,
So people are like, ooh, spending that kind of money on, you know, and we like to at least see something. Well, you can see it when you
Outside
turn on
of
your
mine,
faucet, right?
yeah.
And we have a good water quality. The DPW just won an award for that water quality, but it's a rotten conversation because you're spending millions of dollars. Like, we have to do it on Slocum Street because the whole road's getting done. And I said, there's no way in hell you're doing that project without replacing the water main, period. Right? The sewer pipe's pretty new. Don't have to worry about that, but I can't wait for them to get in there, put their new water main. It's an upsized main that we're also doing to get better flow and pressure to other people. However, I can't wait when they connect a new line up. I want a piece of the old line so we can see what's inside that pipe, and I've seen.
I have a report from Department of Public Works from January 2014 on Acushnet that the DPW did. 36.6% of water pipe is over 50 years old, 34% 20 to 50 years, 10 to 20 years, 14.8%, 14.6%. And then they have sewer on here as well. Sewer age, 9.8 over 50 years, and then 73.7% is 20 to 50 years.
Right, and I have a newer report than that one.
Do you?
My report says 43,000 feet is 100-plus years old.
100 plus.
And I don't want to scare anybody, but you can all go on the internet and look at what an old 120-year-old water pipe looks like inside, and you can read up about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to describe it on TV, but I'd be more than happy to take anybody down to the DPW bound, and I can take those small pieces when we have water main breaks, and the DPW's out there in the freezing cold in the middle of winter digging a pit to get to that pipe and replacing it, right? And you take it out. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's not something that is, how does a community stay alive? I just told you over 3,000 people there on municipal water, right? And if anybody remembers Flint, Michigan, that should all be a reminder for all of us that we need to actually get our act together and start putting money into infrastructure and fixing these problems, right? Because on any given day, we could be them.
Right, yeah. I know Joe's gonna touch a little bit more on water in the coming section. I have a couple more sections to get through, so let's run through those and then we can dive deep into the water. Just to round out services and facilities, 5.1.3, support staffing increases across key departments, including police, fire, and the planning department. Any questions on that one? All right. We have a vision statement talking about replacing, modernizing, and improving aging town buildings. So we are actually, the town actually recently submitted the grant to produce an 8-day self-evaluation and transition plan. So we include it in the master plan just in case we don't get it because it supports future asks. But either way, incorporating it here is really important because once you apply for the ADA self-evaluation plan, you complete your document, you figure out what you need to address, and then you have the opportunity to apply for capital improvement fundings to get ramps, get doors, accessible playgrounds, all that type of thing, sidewalks. So a good opportunity, something that the town is thankfully and luckily participating in, hopefully, fingers crossed. So 5.2.2, develop a feasibility study to determine the best future use and redevelopment strategy for the old Russell Memorial Library as well as other vacant town old buildings. So we touched a little bit about that earlier, so that's in the works. Again, want to include it just in case the application doesn't prove successful and we are not funded in this round. Last section before I hand it off to Joe, transportation and circulation. We talk about complete key transportation projects that improve circulation, safety, and appearance in Acushnet. So we talk about participating in the Complete Streets program to adopt and support infrastructure improvements. This program, very similar to ADA, once you produce the priority plan and say what it is that you want to address, you can tap into capital improvement funds to implement some of those changes. You can continue to lobby for the construction of a bypass road to provide frontage to town-owned industrial land. We talked about this a little bit earlier as well. Looking at the priority, is that a high, is that a low? Should I change that?
Yeah, that probably should be high.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the biggest opportunity for economic development.
Okay, great. And then the last section, provide more bicycle, pedestrian, and transit facilities in key areas in town. So continue developing connections between the Fairhaven Bike Path, New Bedford, and Acushnet. I know we're exploring what that might look like. I know there might be some studies already completed on what that looks like, so we want to solidify that in the plan and really make sure we're getting consensus on that. 6.2.2, create a townwide bike and pedestrian plan. 6.2.3, explore potential permanent bus routes in town with SRTA. Any questions on that section before I hand it off to Joe? None. Okay, great. You want to drive or? Okay.
Alright, so for the water resource management plan, 7.1, education campaign to establish cost of sewer tie-in versus septic repair and upgrade. This is mostly from one of the conversations that we had that some residents, this is dependent on kind of the one-stop application that Victoria is applying to, and if you guys are going to be expanding the sewer, which I know you guys want to do, if it's a voluntary hookup, just educating people on what are the benefits of being on sewer versus septic, because a lot of this comprehensive wastewater plan, the section that I'm writing for wastewater is going to be talking a lot about what are the benefits of sewer from an environmental perspective and what are the downsides of septic, and also the economic development aspect of why sewer is beneficial. But then also, Kevin, I know you were talking about people might be hesitant to hook up to sewer. So one of the things is just kind of taking pieces of this wastewater section and explaining to people what are the benefits of being on sewer versus septic.
Look, the cost of sewer rate is just continues to go up, and its affordability is becoming harder and harder in every community, not just the Acushnet, right? Mm-hmm. But it's very advantageous to have sewer. It's just you have to provide it at a reasonable cost.
Yep.
And you have to demonstrate to the people the payoff for tying it in immediately, right? So if you run a sewer phase, I think Board of Health only gives you, I think just like just Steve Boucher was here, it happened to him in the village district up there. I think the Board of Health gives you a maximum 7-year grace period, depending on the age of your new. So if you just put a new septic system in and you spend nowadays 30 grand, that's without nitrogen load systems, you spend roughly $30,000 on a sewer system, and then the town says in 5 years they come across and go, oh, you know what, there's a need, we're doing it. Well, they'd have to get it approved from town meeting to do a betterment. But it passes. Somebody with a brand new septic system, so they have some rule that they've come up with, and they say, well, we'll give you 7 years, you don't have to tie into it, right? But after that 7 years, you are tying into it. So, I mean, it's better to have a plan in place and identify, like we have, the CWMP has identified the 2 areas, right? From down here all the way down to the Nice Lane spot, and then the South Main Street area, right? We just got done talking about that. When Woodward and Curran came in front of the town and they gave the Board of Selectmen an update on that CWMP, in future years, the cost was absolutely outrageous, and no one in their right mind is gonna go, yeah, I want sewer for that cost, right? So you have to have enough smart people in a room to figure out a way to make it, to bring in sewer expansion and sell it to the people, saying this is what your septic system would cost if you need an upgrade, which a lot of people will, right? There's a lot of old cesspools.
Yes.
properties in this community.
Yep.
And you would have to be able to say, we can provide you sewer for X number. When I was speaking with Mr. Bernard, we were trying to do something in-house, town-wide on this area. I talked about it for like 10 grand. Well, it makes sense because even though sewer is a higher cost, right, water in, water out, we would provide you with a payoff plan. Like, it's gonna cost you 10, but if you have to put a new septic, it's 30, and this is how many years you can be tied into sewer before you even hit the 30.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to
You know what I mean?
tell residents
So there's,
about.
it definitely needs to be done, it's a very delicate conversation when
Yeah.
you're reaching into somebody's pocket.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
there's always a right way to do something and a wrong way to do something, right?
Exactly.
And it's just having enough smart people to navigate what is the right way,
Mhm.
right?
That's why I put it first, I just wanted to throw that by you guys, so we can talk about that. And we can talk about that more too down the road. So is there anything you guys want to add to that one, or? Okay. So address flooding concerns through a variety of interventions. So we're going to talk about this a little bit in the water resource management plan, but then also once we have the hazard mitigation plan, we're going to do a real deep dive into flooding. But I know you guys have been talking a lot about solar fields causing flooding in town. So that's going to be a lot of different stuff going into a flooding section. Anything to add there? Any other things I need to highlight in that section besides that? Okay. Collaborate with the town of Fairhaven on sewer and water IMA. I don't think I was here when this conversation took place, but essentially the notes say, not sure if this one will be used. There are some controversy during the last deep dive about whether it would be appropriate to have some town user pay more than others when sewer outside of this potential IMA is expanded. So this is water costs from New Bedford versus Fairhaven.
So you can never do water, first of all, because unless you totally isolated one section of the town and you loop that system where it would never be tied in, but you can't. The city of New Bedford would never let us tie into the water infrastructure system, not knowing where that water source is, right? Because of cross-contamination reasons, right? And it would backflow into the city and cross-contamination, so they wouldn't allow that. They're either gonna say either you're all in with them and you can re-loop your whole system to be looped to them, or you stick with us.
So going to the New Bedford IMA, the next one, what are your thoughts on Fairhaven versus New Bedford about drinking water?
Fairhaven has an issue right now, big time.
So Fairhaven would never be able to supply our 3,000 plus water users because only so much of their water comes from, I think they grab
Rat
from
poison.
New Bedford, but they're off the reservoir, the watershed up there, the wells and all that stuff. They could never do that. The conversation that we did have with Fairhaven was over sewer.
Sewer? Okay.
So water would
take out
not, water would never happen,
Okay,
just because they don't have the resources to supply.
okay. What was the
In that
conversation with
So
sewer?
sewer was, we years ago, somewhere again in the realm of 2013, 15 area. And the only reason why I bring you back to that is because the former town administrator, the former town administrator, Mr. Catino, he retired in 2016, so I know it was a conversation when he was here. So I just bring you back to that little window all the time because I remember he was here.
Mhm.
And we did have a conversation with Fairhaven, with sewer. The problem is their rates are much higher than the city of New Bedford. We're pegged to the city of New Bedford because in the early 70s, we have a federal grant that we're tied to. So without us, they couldn't do anything from their perspective. So we're tied to them. So right now, the reason why our sewer rate is higher than the city of New Bedford sewer rate, we are charged the same thing that they charge their customers for the sewer rate, but in our sewer budget, we have fixed costs, which drives up our sewer rate to our customers.
Okay.
So we buy at a decent rate, let's just call it $5 per cubic foot, right, on 100 cubic feet. And we sell at 8, 9, 10 as a tiered rate in the town, right? And that's all due to the fixed costs in the budget, right? That's why I said if we expand, there's a lot of ups to expanding sewer to a degree if we can do it fiscally responsible ways, because if we have 900, just call it let's call it 1,000 sewer users, we're somewhere around 960, 980, I don't know the exact number, but we're close to 1,000, so for right now, for easy math, we'll just use 1,000. If, when I said on this side of town, there's roughly 320, and most of them, 90% of those 320 are on the west side of the middle road, so it's all gravity fed, it's downhill. If we could capture that, we could increase our sewer users by 30% roughly, right? A third, right? So what that does is it takes all those fixed costs and it dilutes it by 300 and somewhat new customers, right? So that would drive down sewer rate.
Okay.
You follow me? So there's a lot of different advantages to sewer expansion. It's just when the CW Woodward and Curran and those folks gave us that number, they were talking in the realm of like $40,000 per household,
Yeah,
which is ludicrous.
yeah.
So
any sewer expansion would be through New Bedford?
no, I'm not saying we wouldn't do something, it was just the price differences from Fairhaven. Yeah, I mean, there's an opportunity to seek, potential opportunity to seek with Fairhaven for a sewer.
Yeah.
Because we could isolate that all on its own for that section of town. There's roughly 300 people on that end and any future growth that we would have in that general area.
Okay.
So, you know, you got 350, call it. It's not a big group, but then it created havoc on how we bill things and charging people different rates. It was just something that we didn't have the appetite to even try to talk about and implement. And the problem is there's a lot of ledge to get through on that south side of town. So the cost, that would drive up cost,
Okay.
right? Not saying anything's possible.
Yeah.
It's just the approach and how you go about a project, right?
Okay.
So it is something, I think, it doesn't hurt by leaving it in there for a conversation. Water should be stricken, sewer, conversations,
Yeah,
sure.
these are all recommendations.
Right.
Exploration.
That's all it is, right? And that's what the master plan is. We learned that
Yeah.
early onset of this. This is just something for, you know, a guideline book for the town to look at and
Yeah.
explore. Nothing's etched in stone, everything goes to town meeting, right?
Yep.
So, it's just something for us to look at and say this was a concern, and if opportunity we see, we could at least point for
Yep.
grant applications. We could point to our master plan and say, we've identified this in our master plan, and that's the purpose of us seeking this grant. Right, and it helps us, I think that helps us.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? If it's not in the master plan, they look at it, you know, well, if it's not in your master plan, how important is it to you? So I don't think it hurts by having things like that in a master plan,
Yeah.
right? Because you never know what the future brings you, so.
7.4, update drinking water IMA with New Bedford to support continued services. Any thoughts on that?
No.
Maybe just keep wording, finish the section, just for the sake of time.
Okay.
You know?
Extend water and sewer to critical areas to enhance town's ability to attract and retain commercial businesses. We talked about that. Continue to pursue sewer expansion across the 6 phases to address nitrogen pollution. That's all outlined in the CWMP. Take ownership of the New Bedford Reservoir to manage maintenance and stewardship. Any comments on the water management plan? Anything need to be added?
No, actually, my colleague, Selectman Walmass, we just talked about it. We had the Lake Street Committee, a few folks that are on it, and we're doing some weed abatement out there. We're gonna dredge and, you know, the wall of roots and stuff like that. It's gotta be done. So we talked about that, right? The people of Acushnet have put in an initial investment to start that project, and we started doing like the parking lot and trying to beautify that and put a walking trail in and such things. But, you know, I think he brought up a really good point about the lakes is really, they have the water rights, right? So either they're gonna transfer that to Acushnet, but I talked about the deeds and stuff, the way it come over to the center, the way it was dredged out. So I don't know how complicated that is, but you can do just a simple transfer of water rights. Because I don't really believe that the city owns all the land underneath it, right? And they took that, I think it was in the late 1800s, it was like 1890 or something like that, they got the water rights for that, but
1860, I say.
one other was mentioned, I know I read it in knowledge.
It was stopped used as a drinking resource, I think it's 1890s.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's what it was. So, but they need to stop ponying up some money to clean up the weed abatement, because I mentioned that I have a bunch of old intermunicipal agreements that I dug out, And then the first one that I had, I was kind of going word for word to see how sneaky they were with changing things. And they dropped that out of the first one that we had years and years and years and years ago. But it mentioned they were responsible for the maintenance of those lakes. And as they went along, they were like, yeah, no, get that out of there. We don't want to be spending that kind of money. But it wasn't mentioned in the prior IMA.
And we could still write about what the best, like even though you guys don't own the reservoir right now, we can outline best management practices of how to keep the reservoir clean, like of stuff like that. So moving on to open space. 1.1, manage chapter 61A land to apply conservation restrictions or easements to manage future land use. 1.2, develop an open space residential design OSRD bylaw. That's, we went over that already, but that will be written out in the open space plan. Support land for preservation and recreational purposes, focus on early efforts at Keith's Farm. Continue and seek new partnerships between private landowners, land conservation groups, state and local governments to enable future open space acquisitions. Any comments on 1.1 to 1.4?
We don't have any priorities on this page. Is that intentional for this whole section?
Oh, the priority statement.
Like the high, low. That's what I mean, right?
I don't think that's a requirement of the open space and recreation plan,
Yeah,
because they
that's true.
follow different guidelines, so you don't have to do that for this one.
Right.
But for the purposes of, you know, continuity and including it in the Acushnet master plan kind of like document, we can add that in.
That's a good question.
I would just say with 1.4, continue to seek out new partnerships. I know like Buzzards Bay Coalition gets a lot of grants, whether it be from NOAA or other conservation groups in the state, and we pretty much don't have to pay too much for the property out of pocket. Most of the money comes in the form of grants. I think, you know, if they can do it, why can't the municipality do that? I'd like to explore those opportunities, you know, so it isn't all coming out of CPC money or whatever the case may be.
No, absolutely.
They definitely get a lot of grants, but they have a lot of wealthy donors as well, from the conversations I've had over there. We're working on them with a few different projects. They also have an entire grant writing team. That's one of the reasons why they get those grants. They have people who are very good at writing grants.
I know a lot of the grants require a municipality to have the conservation restriction.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would work with a municipality,
And
but
also, like, part of what we do is write grants on behalf of towns. So we can do that for you. If there are grants available for, you know, acquiring land like that, anything conservation-wise.
awesome.
Can I just make one comment?
Sure.
I just want to note that having the updated open space and recreation plan in place will open up opportunities for grant programs.
Awesome.
So,
All right, moving on, OSRP 2, improve access to natural areas, parks and recreational facilities, expand walking trail opportunities on town-owned recreation or open spaces, develop a coordinating wayfinding and signage model for town-wide multi-use conservation and recreational properties, assets and opportunities, pursue development of a town canoe open space guide, establish more recreational access along local water bodies, including the Acushnet River and the Bedford Reservoir. Any comments on there? Anything to be added for the OSRP?
The only thing I would say is, if we're just looking at priority things, the thing that sits in my mind that had the most allure for the townspeople was trying to redevelop Keith's Farm into a recreation point. If we were looking at all the things here, that would be my highest focus.
Definitely.
I don't know how the rest of the committee feels about that.
Definitely a partnership with the land trust for sure.
I said it gives us great opportunity too to work with some of the vocational schools for
Absolutely.
any of the work and stuff that's done around it at little or no cost for the town.
Definitely.
Get our money from Old Country.
I'm with you on that.
Is there anything generally in our conversation tonight that is missing in the master plan? Something that we haven't mentioned that you'd like to see included?
I don't think so.
You can also reach out, if you do think of anything, feel free to just let me know and I'll pass that on.
So, just to give you guys a sense of what the next steps are for us, now that we've kind of reviewed these with you, we'll make the final changes to the recommendations, send them out, and over the course of the summer, we'll be writing. So for us, it's like a recess from these meetings. If you guys would like to continue meeting, that's at your discretion. But we don't have content to share with you during that time because we'll be writing it to share with you in the fall. So back in September, we'll resume coming to these meetings, share those drafts with you well ahead of time so you can read them because they tend to be a little bit lengthier than what we've been sharing over the last few months. A little bit, yeah. So you'll have an opportunity to read those, make edits, make comments, and share them with us. So that way, over the fall and leading into the winter, we can edit and complete the plan. But like Victoria said, if during that time you have questions, you're like, oh wait, I forgot, I really wanted to add this in there, we can have that conversation and make changes. It's easier to add something in September after we've written everything than, wait until, December. And you go, I don't know. But the door is always open if you guys would like to add anything.
Thank you.
And then one thing before I finish with our piece here, in July we will be having a public workshop where members of the public will be invited to attend to look at these and get a sense for what it is that we'll be writing and working on. We have not set necessarily a location, but we are thinking a Saturday morning, mid-July. If there are any locations that you think would be more popular with people, we are taking suggestions because we want to listen to you guys, see what you have to say, if there's anything that we're missing with regards to getting in touch with people.
Just make sure the building's good, air conditioned.
I will check that.
Or if it's outdoor, maybe Lake Street. People fishing, people.
Be tough to do it because you're limited with parking.
Right.
You don't know what you might get trapped, you know what I mean? And there's not a whole load of parking. With people on the water fishing and families, there's traffic, you increase that traffic.
What about Keys Farm?
That could be a problem.
Is that open to the public yet?
No, it's still,
No.
still in probate.
Or are we talking about the ice cream place?
Oh, Acushnet.
Doing a tabling, not a workshop. But
Yeah, a workshop would be hard.
yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Sure, you can meet me there later and buy me an ice cream cone.
On Saturday morning, you're probably okay. Afternoon and evening, forget it.
Yeah.
That place rocks.
Yeah.
Like crazy.
That's plenty of engagement though.
You may be able to work with them and have them open early on that particular day, and they may be willing to do it if it's for a town meeting, it'll bring in extra business for them.
Maybe out there,
And it wouldn't interfere with the regular clientele, so it's an option.
What did you say?
Boy, if we
maybe
start
out there, a little like picnic area over there off to the
We
side.
start having town meetings, as Mr. Benoit just alluded to at the Acushnet Creamery, we'd be doing all right. So, just for everybody at home that's watching it right now, it's not a town meeting at Acushnet Creamery.
Yes,
It's just
yeah.
It's just a meeting for Serpent to get more follow-up engagement and things of the like, but there we do have additional, although it's summer because of baseball season, but we do have full parking, there's quite a bit of
Yeah.
parking in there.
Okay.
It'd be good to go, sorry.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure it's gonna be 90 degrees and your ice cream's gonna melt the first time so, again, I don't know if that's something that you folks wanna be dealing with as unbearable outdoor weather.
We can make it work. We have tents.
Yeah.
Now, as far as getting that word out though, where you're gonna meet, how are you gonna do that?
So because we haven't settled on the location, we haven't announced anything yet. We are still over a month, I believe, because I think we're targeting the 19th, July 19th, right now. So we can reach out to, would we have to reach out to anyone for Pope Park?
Yeah, Chad, right?
Yeah, you definitely have to
Okay.
chat.
Yeah, I can do,
I have a chat.
You have chat.
You do, okay, all right. Maybe we can coordinate it maybe a little bit earlier for like before a game starts, because we found that when we attend like Little League games or something like that, parents want to watch their kids play, not talk to me.
I said that. I'm like, yeah, how much engagement you get, yeah, right?
Right, exactly.
Parents, they're running around
What was
like
the thing,
chickens.
what was the thing in Dayton that they went to that they get an engagement?
I think the cow chip.
Cow Chip Festival where they were with their families, they did not, they wanted.
Of course, that's, most people, if you're raising a family and young children today, you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off. You're going to work, you're coming home, bundling up the kids, putting them in uniforms, whatever it may be. Hurry up, scoot off to the park, right? And then, you know, the significant other's like, I'll just meet you there because I'm doing this. And it's just, I mean, these guys have little kids. I mean, they know, I mean, my kids all grown up, but I mean, give me a break. I mean, these people, I have people in my neighborhood, it's just a constant running around doing this, and one parent's taking them this, and I'll meet you there later, and I'll take them to the next thing, you know, whether it's soccer, the second kid's like, well, this, you know, we're gonna be at the baseball park at 5, but I also have to be at the soccer field at 6, so one parent's sitting here, the other parent's taking off to this, and
Are there
it's a
any?
very hectic lifestyle in today's world that we live in, right?
Yeah. Are there any other events in town that are well attended, but maybe not like specific?
Car show.
We do cruise night in the last Thursday of August, but I can tell you right now, I highly doubt anybody wants to talk to us.
Okay. That's good
Because
insight.
it's cruise night, I mean, it's kind of a night out, just relax, checking out antique cars, listening to music and things like that, so I don't know how much engagement. It might be worth a shot, who knows? I don't like to speak of that stuff because I don't know what you're gonna get.
It's hit or miss.
Joe just talked about some other festival and they're like, I ain't talking to you, we got no engagement. I don't wanna waste all your folks' time coming somewhere and going, well, that's great, you had 500 people and we spoke to 3. You know, they actually gave us a time of day.
Yeah.
So it's to be respectful of your time and your resources, it should be
A
kind of its
standalone.
own standalone
Yeah.
thing, right? And you just try to do your best to communicate, saying, this is what we're having, you know?
Yeah.
Unless you show up in a 68 Camaro, you might get some.
So,
I don't know if that's in the budget.
so,
but I
you know,
wish.
I think maybe Pope Park would be the thing, because, look, if I'm just sitting around eating ice cream,
Yeah.
I'm more than willing to engage with you,
Mhm.
as long as you don't touch my ice cream, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be sitting here and I'll eat ice cream and I'll engage with you, and you might wanna ask me a couple of quick questions to get my input. And
Yeah.
I'll be more than happy to do that because I got a off-white Sunday in front of me, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Listen, call it
But
an
but
ice
touching
cream
the ice cream's
social.
off limits.
Come
right?
and learn about the
Touching
town's
the-
master plan and get an ice cream from Acushnet's favorite ice cream shop
Oh, I know
at the
that.
same place.
Hey, he's a marketing professional. You don't wanna know his hourly rate, well, I can't afford him, but.
Okay, we'll do some outreach. Does anyone have a contact there? Usually a cold call is not as successful.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
I
friend.
know the family very well.
Okay,
So if it's something that you wanna do, if you wanna let Victoria know that, hey, you know what, we're gonna do it, you know, at Pope Park, once Joe talked to Chad, I can talk to Chad too, I mean, I have their numbers, but if you wanna reach out to him, right, and say, you know, like, I don't know what Chad's gonna tell you about that date. If it's a Saturday morning, he might say, hey, you know what, good news. If you're here at 10 and you get the heck out of here by 11:30, we don't have anything going on until noon, right?
yeah.
So do you wanna have that little half-hour window of, if we're gonna do something for an hour and a half, 90-minute event, we'll get there, we can clear out the area so that when parents are showing up with their little ones to baseball games or whatever it may be, we'll be out of their way,
yeah,
That works.
right?
go for it. I like it.
And I can definitely, if you line that up and Chad doesn't have a problem with a specific date, if you change the date, I'll wait until you can get a date, and then I have no problem contacting the owners and having that, I have a great relationship with them.
That would be great. I
They're
appreciate
super-
that.
They're super great people,
Thank you.
right? So.
That's everything for me.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Besides, we're gonna make sure that the ice cream shop's open.
That is true, very important. I can't call it an ice cream social.
Nope. If it's not, they gotta be open.
They're just fantastic people, and it's, I don't know what time people open up ice cream shops, I'm not gonna pretend to know. But, you know, if they say we don't open until 11 o'clock, they're the kind of people that say if we're gonna be there at 10, they would accommodate
Mhm.
and open at 10. I know that for a fact, they're just those kind of people, right? So, you let me know.
Okay, we'll do, yeah,
will.
we'll
If you
do
wanna
some
just, if
coordinating
you
over
wanna
there.
just get hold of Victoria, and Victoria can get hold
Yep.
of me, and we can coordinate it, I'm more than happy to do that with you folks.
They open at 11:30 on Saturdays.
There you go, but I can have that conversation once we know what day we're gonna.
Okay, yeah, we'll
It's
work on
even
getting
better
that.
for 10 to 11:30 than they open up at 10 and it doesn't take away from any of their customers parking or anything else, so.
Yeah,
Okay,
We'll make it happen,
thank you.
Sounds good.
all right? And if we don't get to see each other for the next couple of months, have a great summer, be safe.
You too. We will.
Most importantly, be healthy,
Yeah.
right? And as far as we're concerned, the only reason why we'll have to have another meeting is if we come up with something, or you come up with something, Victoria, but if
I
not,
mean, I put in the schedule to have the 2-month break, but if you guys decide you wanna hold a meeting, just let me know and I'll get something set up. But,
Okay.
so even, if you want to send out an email to all the members, and just let them know that if there's anything that you feel is an important subject matter to have a conversation, please contact
okay,
me, which is you,
yeah,
and you can speak with the chairman to try to organize a night for a meeting. And we can touch base on whatever you want to talk about. But other than that,
perfect.
all pretty familiar faces to me. I'll see them over the summer, so I don't have to tell them to have a great, healthy summer.
But thank you.
thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second,
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.